immigration segment, and we thought to bring the immigration questions and answers. We have the Lucas Garrison from Bulgos and Garrison Lafrem. He's a very nice and he's ready to support to in front line to any immigration issues. We have a lot of sessions with him earlier. He supported the one university was fraudulent university. His support is very tremendous. Support is very tremendous. So we together bring the new show presenting about USA immigration. You have any questions? Any questions? You can reach out to the attorney Lucas. So today is a special live. We are coming with the Facebook Live and YouTube Live. So welcome Lucas. Welcome to new show.
Thank you for having me, Venkat. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share what the current events are with immigration as we sit today.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. I hope present circumstances you are safe and healthy. Even in Dallas area, I see a lot of cases, and Houston area we have a lot of cases. I hope the corona will stop. Even the pandemic will stop sooner. Recently today we hear the Trump side is saying that vaccine will release on November 1st or 2nd. Hopefully it will release and get benefited all across the world. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully, and also if we can continue practicing social distancing, wearing masks, other protective equipment, hopefully we'll also mitigate the spread of the virus so we can get back to normal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's come to the U.S. immigration. So just to give me a point of view, what is the current immigration, the Trump administration status, and just give me what the present status.
Well, I think most people will know that a few weeks ago, a month ago, President Trump extended an executive order which limits H1s, L1s, J1s, and certain other non-immigrant statuses, and certain immigrant people going for GC from entering the country. Now, what he's done is pretty much used the health crisis as a platform to say that, we have to close the appointments because of the coronavirus and everything else. So it's somewhat of a ploy, I think, to scare people, use of propaganda to say we're protecting American jobs. Hopefully by the end of the year, things will get back to normal. I know there's quite a few people who are, presently stuck back home, or people here who are stuck here in the United States that have family emergencies, and it's a tough decision to know whether to stay here or go back home, and that uncertainty is a whole other level of stress that I know that a lot of people have had. So that's where we're at with that, and pivoting on immigration news. There is always a silver lining, I guess you could say, to any problem that you might have, where we've heard, other immigration attorneys and I have heard, that due to the COVID-19 situation, there's been a tremendous amount of family-based visas that have not been able to be allocated or used, either due to the virus or due to economic impact where families can't pay for filing fees. And the Department of State has made a comment that they might reallocate about 110,000 of these family-based visas to employment-based. So that's good news for people who are from either China or India, who have tremendous backlogs. So hopefully that would help speed up the green card process and help move people from H1 on into GC.
Lucas, it is a good news for whoever employment based. It's gonna add 100 to 120,000 green cards. It's a very good news for employment based H1 holders. So it means keep hearing about it gonna add. Do you have any date particularly it gonna be add that these numbers you can when we can expect it this number gonna add to the visa bulletin?
So the September visa bulletin obviously is already out, and the end of the fiscal year for 2020 is going to be September 30th. The new fiscal year, which is like a new year for the government, is going to start October 1st. So we expect the visa bulletin in October to reflect these additional visas added to the employment-based categories. Now, what does this mean? It's not like India is going to get 110,000 extra visas. So they're going to be allocated and distributed accordingly. And based upon need and demand, there's certain mathematical calculations that go into this based on how many visas are used, backlogs, so on and so forth. And we probably are looking at 5,000 to 6,000, I would imagine, to India. And what does that mean? Probably anyone with a priority date going towards EB2, I would say if you're getting close to 2011, EB3 probably 2011 also would be for filing date and not a final action date. But that means that you have the permission to file even though the visa is not available and start the process to get EAD, so on and so forth.
Okay, it means the most of the people who below it means in 2000 till 2011. Good news for them. So it means three procedures to everyone be ready for the apply the green card adjustment quota. It means do you have any procedure or
yes,
maybe a holder can take it means they want to ready to file whenever the dates are out.
Correct.
So they want to be ready with all information and all documentations. What kind of documentation required for them to be ready? Can you give me this brief information on that one so that it will helpful for them?
Of course, first of all, you want to start out, you want to have an approved I-140 with the correct priority date reflecting, the ability to file. You would want to have, obviously, your basic information, passports, birth certificates, marriage license, if you where you've lived for the past 5 years, where you've worked for the past 5 years, social security number, all these requirements. And there's a new caveat that, and this is what I've been telling most of my clients, to always be prepared. The reason why we want to be prepared is USCIS has now required additional proof to show that you're not going to be a public burden or a public charge when you adjust your status. So what does this mean? Well, what this means is there's additional steps involved. There's additional forms involved. And on these forms, we're going to have to show assets, bank statements. You're going to have to show maybe a credit report and have all that ready so you can submit your package together. And another side effect of the current administration and where we are with this process is a lot of people I've noticed, or not officers have updated with how they accept cases. So literally today, if you forget to check one box on 300 pages of all your family's documents, your whole package will be rejected and returned to you. So it's always best to have everything completed in advance or as much as possible, and that allows you to proofread, check, and double check. So when you do have the opportunity, you don't have your case rejected and then that window close just because of some minor mistake.
Okay. So this is a very very detailed, thankful information. It means I hear somewhere else, it means one of my friends saying that do we need to maintain last 5 years of home address? So it means if they want to ask the last 5 years residence address, the USCIS will inquire, or do we need to produce the proof of document, hey, we are staying here or something?
So
for 485?
No, technically what you would want to do is, it would be similar to if you're have an RFE, changing from F1 to H1 status, where you can show a utility bill or something like this. There's really no formal requirement to show that I have a mortgage payment. There's no formal requirement to show I have an apartment lease. So what we would want to do is just to maybe have all the documentation there to prove that you're living in the United States. The most important aspect would be proving that you maintain a lawful non-immigrant status while you're here. What do I mean by this? A lawful non-immigrant status, for example, would be if you're an H1B visa holder, we would want to show that you've maintained at all times your H1B status, and this can be established by primarily your payroll. Okay, so we want to make sure you're not on bench, that you haven't gone through any period of not being paid, or any other issues with gaps of employment. And that's another thing that is needed for these changes to take place, because there is such a challenge for professionals, and that's everyone who's H1B visa holder is a professional. There's bad luck with the economy, with downturns. We've all experienced it this year with coronavirus. What happens in the economy? You could be here with your family, you could have a house, a car, living normal, and the next day wake up and your project's over, or you don't have a job, and that's maybe 10, 15 years of your life. And you don't have the security of knowing that no matter what, you can stay. So that's why I want to also pivot on this, on being prepared. We're entering an election year, and we all know how contested and how divisive this election might be here in the United States. And I can pretty much guarantee that if the Democrats take control, probably one of the first items on their agenda within the first 100 days of government is going to be comprehensive immigration reform. So even though today it looks bleak, and it looks like you might be 50, 60, 100 years away from the possibility of employment-based green card, okay? The possibility could be this time next year we're working on legislation that allows a change to the system that would speed up or change the process where people are not constantly having to stay in H1 status.
Eventually, you are talking about you started the political party there, Democrats, and once is really going to be implemented once they are when this is current elections, will they really implement reform the immigration system or something?
I believe so. So really any change that has really occurred has been going on about 20 years, okay? And there's a lot of, and I always tell people that there's a large swath of different people from around the world impacted in different areas of immigration. You have people from, Central America. They're not here on H1B visa holders, H1Bs, but they have their own problems. There's kids here called dreamers who their parents might have brought them here without permission. By no fault of their own, they're here without status. There's all these segments within immigration, and I think the one way to address and fix everything is to comprehensively examine the system, see what we need to fix, what's going to address the needs for people who are in need, and I have a hope that I think that will transpire.
Yeah, I understand. But if all H1B holders, the burning is a long waiting green card process, they don't have proper projections to do their planning anything. It means their the family and their development, everything. But due to this long waiting immigration system, they don't know when gonna they get the green card, so that everyone have the same. It means everyone eagerly waiting for, hey, when I get this my priority date or something. So by this 100,000 new green card, some people, it means most of the H1B holders happy about some dates, some years will go move, but in future other H1B holders are getting very sooner. It means not delayed. It means very sooner. So it means already we had the S384 the bill.
Right.
So even I saw I heard of something I saw in social media. Trump said is if the House the Senate will not approve, maybe I will take a execution action on the bill. Is really going to happen or something? Do you have any?
That's just propaganda, political jargon. You know, he's what. And again, like I want to mention, that bill is focused on one specific part of a large problem, right? We really, and this is why I'm saying to be prepared, be ready. One of the changes that could happen with comprehensive immigration reform might be similar to when George W. Bush was president in 2008. Maybe there's an ability where you've been employed with the same employer for X number of years. You have I-140 approved. Maybe then you can go ahead and file, even though the visa is not available. There might be some provision to allow you to be. There's been discussion of this, like a temporary green card type category, right? So it's not a full legal permanent residency, but it's not a non-immigrant visa, right? So non-immigrant visas, by their own nature, are limited to certain periods of time. The way the program was established was, if you come here and you work and you decide to immigrate and stay, that opportunity is here for you, okay? And no one has ever planned this for someone to last beyond 6 years, much less 15, 20, 30 years for that process to take place. So even if the full legal permanent residency is not available, there could be some other EAD pathway that's not as restrictive as H1B. And then, similar to a lot of the people who filed in 2008, if you have your adjustment of status application pending for more than 6 months, you can port your GC over to a new employer if you want, without having to go through the perm process, the labor process again, which is a lot of time and money. So there's a lot of provisions that we think there's ways to address and fix the structure of the system and make small changes to where we're not impacting large groups of, in this circumstance, large groups of very talented people that help keep our technology sector, our computer software sector, all these critical sectors within our own economy from going away.
Yes, it is. This long waiting is impacting all respective events for personal life and professional, and it means isn't the company side also. It means that they want to the staffing the very good talented persons. They are not getting the proper way. Maybe if we get the current, maybe most of it will helpful the all H1 holders with companies. Right. So it means that you said that recently the USCIS stopped the family-based green card got stopped. But did you see any impact to the H1 holders, whoever eligible for the green card? Are they getting the proper within the time the EAD or green card, and in the pandemic time?
Well, that's a good question. So we all know anyone who's not physically present in the United States under most of these circumstances, there are a few minor exceptions, are not able to go through that process abroad, through a consular process. If you're here in the United States, you can still adjust your status. Now, over the past 2 years, we've seen after submission of an adjustment of status application, we go from 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6, 7, 8 months before you get EAD, right? And so there's been delays that have been increasing. There's been more scrutiny in reviewing all the evidence, establishing the benefit that can be granted by USCIS. And then also, one of the major issues is right now, the people who make the cards is not the United States government, okay? United States, USCIS hires vendors to create the cards. So when there's budget shortfalls or other issues, it causes delays in production. So it kind of throws a monkey wrench into the gears, and it slows everything down and stops everything for some time. So hopefully we can get everything back to the way it used to be, where cards are issued much faster. Even today with H4 EAD, these delays are taking, and most of the delay also is attributed to the coronavirus, but you know, we're seeing 4, 5, 6 month delays after the principal H1 visa holder receives their approval, where their spouse will receive their approval. So it's been frustrating. That's to say the least.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for information. Just one interesting question, Evans. We never hear about this kind of scenario. The family-based green card and allocated to the H1 holders. I don't think the corona pandemic will go away sooner. Let's say the still corona pandemic next couple of months or end of the December. If any leftover family-based green card will allocate it to the H1 holders in future or next year. It means this time they are doing, but next year is there any chance to add those members to the employment green card?
I think so, and I think also like what we were saying, if there is a certain election result, okay, within the first 100 days of government, so president will be sworn in office in January. First 100 days means about 3 months. That's the main agenda the president wants to accomplish. And I believe, priority-wise, of course, we have a health pandemic at the moment with Corona, but I believe high on that list is comprehensive immigration reform. And I really think that the difficulties that a lot of H1B visa holders, specifically from India, are experiencing is something that has to be addressed, and I think it will be addressed along with other groups who need reform. So having said that, as far as the reallocation of the family-based visas, I think, you know, you could look at it, and this is probably a one-time scenario, but hopefully in the future, you know, we could see either maybe more visas allocated by statute. You know, that's something Congress can do and the president can sign into law. Or, you know, like I was saying, maybe we can not so much have the full legal permanent residency with the green card, but then we could also have maybe some type of work authorization that would allow someone to work and be in the United States legally, maybe travel without so many restrictions, okay? And I think that's the key for the future.
Yeah, so minimum have maybe advanced payroll document or something. They're gonna travel very freely and they can stay. Even eventually it will green card maybe will get late sometime later, but initially if any H1 holder have to get minimum authorization accommodation card, that would be better. So they can enjoy the travel and they can plan to.
Well, I've had in some of these, it's frustrating, of course, to wait so long, but I've had a few clients from 2008, 2009 that maybe in the past 2 years finally received their GC after, this long 10-year wait. And it is nice to be able to have the freedom, the mobility to change employers, to not be maybe stuck in the same situation in fear of changing to lose status. But it is nice to have your legal permanent residency and eventually citizenship if that's something you would choose. So you have that security and knowledge that you're going to be committed in staying in one spot, so to speak.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Let's say we're gonna go to the next topic on the H1B current cap and the exemption quota. Is anything before going to H1 segment? Is there anything else you need to cover on green card process and the new 100,000 numbers gonna add into the employment base?
I think what we should do is just to say an alert to anyone listening or anyone who knows of anyone in a similar situation of your priority date, because right now, we're touching June of 2009, I believe. So if you're going between June 2009 and maybe March of 2011, anyone in that swath, they need to be prepared. So when that October 1st turns around, you have everything together and you're not waiting, working with attorney, getting everything together, because it does take time. And what if your package is rejected? Well, if you get it back in November and there's been a large amount of cases filed that meet those requirements, maybe you missed a window to file and the dates might regress. So I would just say be prepared. And then for everyone else who's after maybe June of 2011, even if you have a 2019 or 20 priority date, it's always a good idea to at least talk to an attorney. Be prepared. Make sure you stay up to date on events. The next few months could change could change drastically, and a lot of different things could come up, and maybe other opportunities are here. So you always want to be prepared.
Yeah. Let's all H1B holders or whoever getting the priority date, be ready and collect all required documents and be ready. It will easy to you file the 485 so that your family will happy to get the minimum authorization card. So be ready, and is a good news. Yes, that's the good news for whoever getting this priority date. Yeah, Lucas, let's go to the H1B, the segment. What is the current status on H1B cap and exemption quota? Recently we saw the USCIS removed a couple of amendments so that I heard recent approvals is getting easy and everyone getting the 3 years period. What is your point of view on those?
Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, there was a lawsuit that's been pending for over a year with the IT Serve Alliance with USCIS. So a lot of consultancy companies banded together, and they worked with a firm in Washington, D.C. And they were able to collectively sue USCIS, and based upon the egregious practices that USCIS has incorporated over the past 3 or 4 years, which has been more of a increase step by step of all these additional requirements, from itinerary of services, contracts to prove that you have specialty occupation at work available to a third-party offsite client, all these additional things that didn't exist, 3 or 4 years ago, proceeded, and the judge much granted a summary judgment for IT Serve-Alliance. When that happened, it's bad news for USCIS to continue fighting, because that might allow, further damage or further issues that might make things more fair, you could say, for the petitioners and the beneficiaries. So they entered a settlement agreement, and they issued a policy memorandum which revoked the Newfield memo and the new policy memorandum from about 2 years ago, which required the additional itinerary and the contracts and all these client letters and everything else that has been such a headache for everyone. So yes, now it's much easier to get the 3-year approvals.
The 2021 cap already getting the approval notices. Do you see any RFEs, and if you get any RFEs, what kind of RFEs you are going to see the new changes after new changes? The earlier we saw a lot of the specialty occupations and the client documentations. Are you seeing any kind of very complicated RFEs in these recent times?
Well, always there's a flavor, there's a certain template that officers use, different service centers use in regards to what they're requiring. This year, what I've seen is, pretty much a standard. There's a few specialty occupation RFEs where maybe someone has a background with a master's of business administration, and you're trying to use a different SOC code like software developer applications 151132, where they might not fully align. For the most part, I'd say 80-90% of the RFEs I've seen have involved students who are on CPT and are trying to change status to H1. And basically, we just have to assert and show students have maintained their F1 status. There's kind of a gray area with CPT, second masters. We've been in touch with, we've been fortunate with all the cases we filed and been successful with that. But one of the key provisions that people really need to remember is, when it comes to OPT is regulated through the regulations. Specifically, you cannot do OPT twice. So you can't do OPT for one master's and do it again for a second master's. Okay, that's clearly not possible. But CPT was introduced with the Obama administration, and really the purpose of CPT is to get real skills in the real world, working while you're also going to school. So sometimes, you can't put the cart before the horse, so to speak. You can't learn academically what you might need to know for a degree unless you might have real practical knowledge of what's going on or how the process works. So with CPT, it does allow you to, get that skill and knowledge, but you do have to go to attend class, maintain, your status, and the DSO is the one who can issue the I-20 that allows you to work. So that's really the only RFE we've seen, and like I said, it's not that difficult to overcome those.
Okay. Lucas, on H1B, just I have one scenario actually. It mentions is actually the wife and husband. The initially husband is on H1 and wife on H4. So recently she applied for H1. H1 got approved. At the same time, the primary H1 application got recently extended. He also got the extended, but still H4 is under process and H4 EAD under process to get approved. In between, the H1 got approved for her. What is the scenario here? the already H1 approved, it meant to say from October 1st, it's gonna activate those, the change of status H1. But after 1 month or 2 months, if H4 got approved and they will get the H4 EAD, which one gonna active is H1 or H4 EAD? Well, this is a tricky. It is kind of a tricky to understand the scenario. But USCIS, is there any way the USCIS will deny the H4 or H4 EAD because already H1 is approved? Did you see these kind of scenarios, and can you give your side treatments a point of view? How they gonna take, which one they need to consider, H1 or H4?
So, very good question. A lot of what we do as immigration attorneys is provide options, planning, maybe rainy day plan, something bad happens. So there's many people I've done this for where we have husband here in H1, wife is here H4 with EAD, and she's already on project, obviously, and she has the option, she's picked in the lottery. So when that happens, we make a decision. Do we want to change status from H4 to H1B, or do we want to just enter the cap and request consular processing? That would allow her to be cap exempt, but she would still be in H4 status and be able to work on EAD. So you can't have two status, you cannot be in two statuses at the same time, but what you can do, let's say if you did want to change your status, and you have a pending application for H4 EAD, you will be issued an RFE on one or both, clarifying which option you do want to choose. That's come up before. It's not difficult either way. I mean, it's just everything comes down to time and money. So if there's a mistake that was made or anything else, it's just be the cost of refiling or making sure you know what you want to do. But what I've always recommended is in these scenarios, if one person in the married couple maintains the H1 and the other person's cap exempt H1, and then the employer also applies I-140, and people would say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, maybe husband wants to go to H4 and switch to EAD. He can do so based upon wife, even though her priority date could be years behind. It's still, that allows that flexibility and freedom where husband could, do different jobs, different projects, or vice versa. Maybe husband wants to take the H1 route and wife wants to do H4 EAD. So it allows more flexibility.
Yes, that's true. So just we are talking about the H4 EADs. I got in my mind one question. As you said, the couple, one is a H1 and both. It means earlier both were on H1, but after this H4 EAD, most of the couples, one are in H1 and another one on H4 EAD. Let's say maybe one spouse, the priority date is maybe 2010 or 2011, but currently he is on H4 EAD. He can apply for this new 485. What is what needs to be done to apply for the 485 who are in H4 EAD?
In those circumstances, I mean, we would want to see definitely case by case on something like that to see the underlying circumstances, because you would still need support from maybe a petitioner who filed for you to do like a supplement J for your 485, because it's probably been many years since you've already filed I-140. So something like that, we would have to maybe talk case by case. There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out with that. Going back to the H4 EAD, this is going back to the earlier point I brought up. So often, where you have one principal H1B visa holder, the spouse is also equally as skilled, if not sometimes more skilled than spouse, than the husband. You know, wife might be more skilled than husband in certain areas in the IT sector. And we're really limiting, there's been a lot of talk about ending H4 EAD, and we're really limiting a lot of talent and a lot of opportunity for families to come here and really experience the American dream, really, you know, maybe have the opportunities that they want. And so I think going back to the original statement of comprehensive immigration reform, I think if we have some pathway, even if it's not a full GC, if it's just the EAD that you can qualify for, this opens up all these other doors where, you know, families can plan, you can make decisions together. American economy can benefit by all the skilled workers being able to fully cooperate and contribute. So, you know, I think in the end, I think that's probably the best scenario. And, you know, like I said, we want to stay prepared and be ready for whatever might come up.
Okay, that's good. So, Edmund, the recent changes on H4 extension and Edmund, the fingerprints involved in between the process, the most of the H4 are waiting for the fingerprints and approval notifications. What is the chance in future? Is there any? Is USCIS think about remove the fingerprints or the why this came, and is there any chance in future to remove the fingerprints process or something?
I believe so. You know, the fingerprint process the biometrics was implemented because the current administration believes that there might be people with criminal records slipping through the cracks, right? So they want to vet, USCIS, the Trump administration wants to vet, make sure there's no one who is not qualified because of a criminal background or other issues that they could get that benefit. Now, I don't know how many people have ever, if any, have ever been put through removal proceedings based upon a biometric. I mean, I'm sure maybe one person, but I mean, it's an unnecessary process. It's an unnecessary expense, and especially during this coronavirus, you know, I mean, you're sending your wife and kids, small kids, to go, you know, out for something that, you know, a young kid's not a criminal. There's no need to. And I do want to mention there has been proposals now, and I hope it doesn't go into effect, but the administration is now talking about administering retina eye scans, fingerprints, DNA, all sorts of things for anyone from a non-immigrant all the way up to a green card holder coming into the United States. So, you know, it's very troubling, and you have to really, you know, understand what the reasoning behind it. And hopefully, if we have a different leader, a lot of these fear-mongering and a lot of these policies that think that all the people that come from outside the United States are bad people will go away.
Yeah, because this process, most of the H4 EADs waiting, right? So most of the H4 EAD holders are in FTE. So if the process got delayed, maybe their job maybe need to maybe suspended because they don't have the valid H4 EAD. So they are waiting eagerly before the current H4 EAD completed is going to be. So because of this process, biometric process, the H4 EAD getting very late, it means too late actually. So directly, indirectly impacting their jobs. So is there any way to expedite H4 EAD approval or something?
You can. You can make the request. You'd have to show, you know, economic hardship among other factors. It's really a case-by-case basis, and it's a process that is somewhat difficult to to go through. Now, going back to what we were saying earlier about potentially filing if the dates come current, what you have to realize is you have EAD under C9, which is like adjusting your status. Your card might expire, but you can work for 6 additional months on the receipt, right? So you can work an additional 6 months while your card's being processed. So you can renew your card 6 months before it expires, and you can work for an additional 6 months after it expires. That's 1 year, you see. And currently, for H4 EAD, you can only work for the validity of that card. So if the card expires, September 30th, you cannot work October 1st. And that's why it's a huge stress to get these expedited requests through. I mean, we can try, you can show all sorts of evidence to prove, but at the end of the day, it's a case-by-case basis review from an officer of who they're going to expedite the case request for and who they're not. And they're not going to, one attorney with 30 people is not going to get 30 people, all of them expedited, right?
Yeah.
So there are ways of doing it, but again, it's still a difficult task, and there's no guarantees. There's no system in place that allows a better process, so to speak.
Yeah, I understand. It means the same we are talking about the H4 EADs, and I have some interesting point. It means if you compare the H4 EAD and L2 EAD, so H4 EAD have the whatever the validity period, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, but L2 EAD, I don't think it have the next 2 years or 3 years. They have to extend it every year, I think something, right?
Correct. It'd be based upon the L visa holder. So there's 2 different categories for L visas. You have L1A and you have L1B. L1A would be reserved for managers, executives, things like that. L1B is for special knowledge, business insights that maybe this person knows the secret recipe to make something happen. Those are becoming more and more difficult to process, so they are approved for a shorter period of time. I think 2 years at a time, but it's still very conditional. With even L1s, you might get a 1 year approval, maybe 2 year approval. You're not going to get the full. And so to answer your question, EAD is going to reflect the primary beneficiary, their approval period. And then, moving back to what other current trends there might be, I can't help but emphasize, maybe reaching out to the immigration attorney, get the documents in line. What checklist do we need? What am I missing? Are my kids' passports renewed? Are they? Do I need to do that in the next couple of months? These are all things that you might not even realize that might come up until it's too late. So it's always important to start the process early and just be prepared.
No, thanks, Lucas. So, is there any information on H1 and H4 EAD you have? Is there anything else you want to share to viewers and listeners?
Right now we're in a good spot with H1s, H4 EAD. There is delays, biometric delays, and then also the production of cards. There's delays for those, but overall, this has been a very positive time as far as from earlier this year for the USCIS settled the case. Ever since about mid-March through now, you're seeing 3-year approvals. There's not as many RFEs, so there's more stability, I would say, within the industry.
Okay. So let's maybe we go for next students and F1 and CPT. So already you told, you share your information about the OPT and CPT about H1. So I hear the current 2008, so the current year, the cap, I think did not fill the all 85,000. I hear they draw the another draw the lucky draw. Did you hear something about the lottery system, second lottery system, and do you see any petitions got picked up?
So, very good question. Initially, this year is the first year of the new process. We file online a registration for a period of a couple of weeks in March. It's electronic registration, and if you're selected, then we get a receipt electronically that allows us to file the petition. It tells us which service center to file to, so on and so forth. So maybe there's one lucky employee who was picked with 3 different companies and only decided to file one case. Well, that leaves 2 unused H1 visas. So those go back in the pot, then they rerun the lottery. So they're going to do that all the way through the end of February until it's time for next year. So really, we have 2 or 3 different chances throughout the year to get picked if you weren't picked initially. Now, I've had a second batch already come through, and of course, obviously the batch is much smaller than the first batch, and I'm sure the third batch will be smaller than the second batch, but it's still a chance.
It means the new process is giving more chances to the appliers. It means earlier I don't hear this kind of information.
Well, so also what happens, let's say company A, I sponsor 50 people, okay, traditionally. 2 years later, they find out I use like a fake letter or something like this. Well, if they revoke all those visas, or I went to Farmington and then now they found out and they revoked my visas, right? Those are going to go back into a pool. So in years past, USCIS would always estimate how many do we take to meet that number. Well, now there's a direct allocation of, we know here's the pool that we can keep pulling from, and here's how many visas we have left. So it's more of an exact mathematical equation. It's 1 for 1, whereas in the past it was more of an estimate.
Okay. It was just the one interesting question I mentioned. You already spoke about the one applicant applied from the multiple companies. It got picked up, both the applications. Will he chance to apply both, or is only applied for one company?
So it's a good question. So there's a case that's cited by USCIS and adopted called Matter of S. Okay, what that says is the same employer, even if it has a different tax ID number, different address, different URL, web page, if it's the same conditions for employment, using the same contracts, the same end client, the same layers that go up from end client to petitioner, that they're going to consider that the same employer, and they're going to say it's a duplicate petition, and they're going to deny. So, yeah, it is possible. So there are some fortunate people out there that might have multiple opportunities. If one of your end clients is, Charter Communications, and another end client is Fannie Mae, or obviously it's different. So yeah, you could theoretically file both, and you could file concurrent. You can do. There's a lot of different things you can do, but it wouldn't create an issue where you would have your case denied because of multiple filings.
Okay, that is excellent information. So we are talking about the students and OPT, CPT. And I hear the starting of fiscal this year, someone saying that the Trump administration will limit the OPT period. Means currently they are giving the 3 years. They limited to 1 year, or they won't issue the OPT due to the corona pandemic. As of now, I don't see this kind of information. Is there any chance to limit the OPT period, the 2 years or 3 years?
So the current situation right now, as we're sitting in September, there's no way that this current administration would be able to do anything like that until, until the end, unless they're reelected. Okay, so the president has the ability under certain parts of the code in the INA to limit who might enter the United States. Okay, so that is a lot of what he's done based upon health reasoning, right, with the coronavirus. So a lot of the propaganda you hear, it's not like the president has the magic wand that he can just do whatever he pleases. Okay, so even this DACA, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, that gave dreamers the ability to have work authorization, things like this, even that he can't administrate it. He can't just like wave a wand and make it go away. Courts have said you just can't terminate a program just because it's your own reasoning, right? You have to have some viable reason to end that and start that process. So there's a lot of law that keeps the president from being able to do this. Now, again, if you're outside the country trying to come in, at the moment it's difficult. Hopefully by this December, things kind of get back to some normalcy where, people can travel, see family. If they do, I've dealt with numerous people. It's unfortunate their family gets sick back home, and it's a tough decision. And most of the younger men here, they have to go home because they're worried about mom or dad. They might have coronavirus, but when they leave, then they lose projects, they lose ability. So it's a tremendous issue we have right now, and hopefully, like you said at the beginning, hopefully we find a vaccine here soon that allows things to kind of get back to normal.
Yeah, we hopefully the vaccine should be released as soon as possible, so that everyone will happy and everyone. The corona is the tragic pandemic, the situation. So it mentions about the students, the recently Trump administration maybe initially imposed to everyone attending the classes from university or something. Later, take it back. What is the current scenario about the students? Will they want to go to the in class, or is okay to take an electronic module?
So there's a reference to either a hybrid or a fully online schedule. Each student should be in touch with the DSO, okay? Because at the end of the day, each institution is going to make that decision on if they're going to do fully online or if they're going to have, a hybrid schedule. So you need to make sure you're in touch with the DSO of whatever institution you're with. A couple of headliners that this came out with, I think Harvard said they're going to go 100% online. So that would be the school's decision. If you're an F1 student at Harvard and that happened, obviously the DSO would allow you that to go on because that's the policy of the school. So again, the most important thing is always staying in communication with the DSO. Make sure you're maintaining the requirements so you maintain your status.
Okay. So did you hear about any fraudulent university or fake university recently? We saw last year a lot of issues. Most of the students got affected. Did you see, or do you have any point of?
There is a National Telugu Association based out of DC, and I worked with a gentleman, and I spoke to him while we were going through the Farmington University issue over a year and a half ago, or over a year ago, I guess now. I think.
Yeah, year and a half.
Yeah, and we found another school that's in Florida, and you know, there's a lot of people in the community that are actually looking out for the students. It was a horrendous hardship, and a lot of these students, you know, they went through. It's a horrible thing to have any interaction with police or authority, much less be detained or be arrested for 30 days, 45 days, you know, and you're with criminals, sex traffickers, child traffickers, drug dealers. You know, it's not, it's something that can really impact the rest of your life. So there's been a lot of people who are maybe on the lookout helping. And, you know, so what I've heard, we found one that was in Florida. We don't know if there's any active marketing to help to try and bring more students in or anything like that. So I haven't heard anything in the past 3 or 4 months about that, but definitely we're always trying to look out for anything that might come up in the future, so we can, you know, sound the warning before anything like that happens again.
Yeah. So it means a student must be inquire about the university and get the more information about university while before joining. You take a course from university that could be avoid in future issues, and it is kind of Farmington University. So yeah, that's good information. Lucas, do you have any other? Maybe we can wrap up the show. Do you have any other the information you want to share to us?
I think we've covered pretty much all the hot topics at the moment. Again, like I said, you know, this is the time. Let's prepare. There's a lot of ways you can work with attorney. You know, reach out to whichever attorney you've worked with in the past, or whoever you might want to work with, and find out the process, procedure, find out pricing, find out what works along the way. And you want to avoid any rushing or anything like that, because whenever there's a large rush or there's a large marketing for something that might not happen, a lot of people see an opportunity to make money on that. So the best way to plan is to speak to an attorney, maybe 1 or 2 different attorneys, get a plan in place, know up front what the fee structure might be, know up front what the filing fees might be, and make a plan and execute. So for people that work with me, you know, like as far as like going to get a medical, I would say wait on getting a medical. By the time you go to interview or anything would come up, you're going to have to get another medical. And that's something we can bring to the interview or mail in at a later date. So again, that's my best advice for someone is to plan.
Thanks. Yeah, it means Lucas saying that you can work your attorneys and get prepared whatever it feasible as soon as possible. Whoever getting the time window March 2011 from 2009, it's a good news for them to get the green card. It applied for the 485. So it means you can get the documentation which is required to apply 485. Get from your attorney. It means you can reach out to Lucas if you have any questions, any kind of immigration questions. If you want to take a appointment, you can call to 214-7777-44713, or you can send an email to info@bgimmlaw.com. So Lucas is a very kind and help to the society. We worked almost past 2 years. He helped to a lot of people, and we work closely with Lucas, Farmington University. He helped a lot of the students. Really appreciate Lucas. Thanks for being with Telugu NRI Radio. So,
well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. And anything, that anyone needs, just let me know. And I look forward to maybe doing this again in the near future.
Yeah, Lucas and Telugu NRI Radio bringing this session every week, maybe probably every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central Time. So you can post your questions. You can reach out to Lucas. What if you have any questions, any kind of immigration questions? We are happy to help to you. We are trying to get the more U.S. immigration information to you, so that you can freely enjoy your life. Most of the immigration, the sector, even if you know there's some information, but something gray area in particular scenarios, you can feel free to reach out to us or Lucas. So clear your doubts and clear your whatever the questions. We are happy to help to you. Yeah, thank you, Lucas. You can maybe we can close this session. You can share if you want if anything left or something.
No, I think that covers it well. Look forward to maybe coming back next Wednesday and having another good show. And again, if anyone wants to tune in, we can do live consultations during the show. Brief questions and answers, things like that. And look forward to working with FinCat and NRI Radio. And I appreciate the opportunity and the time.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas.
Thank you.
We invited you. You come and given information about the U.S. immigration. Telugu NRI Radio, thanks for you. Definitely, we will work together, and we will do the every week show on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. So that, thanks for that. You agreed and you take 1 hour time from your work and giving to us. That is very thank you very much. H1 holders enjoy the 100,000 new numbers. Just be ready to apply. Maybe most of the numbers will show up maybe October 2nd or visa bulletin. Hopefully we will get in October 2nd bulletin. By the time, be ready and plan your green card applications. Yeah. So thank you, Lucas, being with Telugu NRI Radio. Thank you very much. I am ending the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Hey, thank you. This is Venkat from Houston. I'm signing off. It's Telugu NRI Radio. Thank you very much.